The New York Jets owner, Woody Johnson, has been wilding out this season, man. So there's been a lot of articles coming out talking about how dysfunctional the Jets have been this season because Woody Johnson has just had very erratic decision making. After the Jets' week 4 loss to the Broncos, they had a meeting where he suggested that they should bench Aaron Rodgers in favor of Tyrod Taylor. And of course, the coaching staff, everybody else in the organization was against it because, I mean, not too long ago, you flew across the country to get on your knees to beg for Aaron Rodgers to play for you instead of retiring. And just for a few years later, you turn on him and you bench him. Aaron Rodgers just isn't any other quarterback. This isn't Sam Darnold. This isn't Zach Wilson. Aaron Rodgers is one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever touch a football. And by benching him, everybody in that organization felt like it would be an embarrassment to Aaron when you think of his legacy and the reputation that he has around the league as one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. And that's definitely not how you would like to end somebody like that's career who's had so much pristine around the league. So instead of benching Aaron Rodgers after they lose to the Vikings across the pond, which is where Woody Johnson has a lot of friends at, I guess he felt embarrassed and he felt like he had to make the move to fire Robert Saleh, although the defense wasn't the problem. The offense was the problem. And then, the Jets, they continue to lose. He forces the trade for Devontae Adams, takes it upon himself to go ahead and come to a deal with Hassan Reddick so he can play for the remainder of this season, and nothing has gone right. The Jets have only won one game since they made the decision to get rid of Robert Saleh, and they traded for Devontae Adams, brought back Hassan Reddick, and now with them at 3-8 heading into their bye week, they make the move to fire general manager Joe Douglas, which I felt was uncalled for. Joe Douglas has not been a bad general manager. He has had his fair share of misses, such as drafting Zach Wilson, but he's made a lot of good draft picks as well. You got Elijah Vera Tucker, Brees Hall. You got a good amount of young talent on that team, and you made some really good acquisitions. And he wanted the trade for Jerry Jeudy during the offseason, but Woody Johnson handicapped him. He said, nah, we don't want you to get Jerry Jeudy. And what was weird was when Aaron Rodgers went down with that Achilles injury last season, I was really puzzled why they weren't in the market for trying to trade for a more established backup like a Jameis Winston or somebody of that caliber. And the reasoning that they opted to stick with Zach Wilson and why they didn't really try to do much to improve their quarterback situation was because Woody Johnson wouldn't allow them to. And I don't really know Woody Johnson that much of an owner. Most owners you don't really know that much about unless they're like him. They're just crazy. They're Looney Tunes. And it seems like Woody Johnson has gone off the deep end because it just seems like he's been trying to do everything he can to prohibit this team from being able to win games is what it seems like. You would think with Aaron Rodgers going down, you've already gave it a good go with Zach Wilson that you would want a better option behind center to somewhat give you a better chance of making it to the playoffs. But Woody Johnson was like, nah, maybe he didn't want to pay more money to a backup quarterback. But then in the offseason, there was a lot of fuss about the Jets not even making a contract offer to Bryce Huff, who was coming off a breakout season. Instead, he leaves for the Philadelphia Eagles, who gave him a contract that the Jets easily could have matched. And now we got the answer for why they never gave Bryce Huff an extension, because Woody Johnson blocked Joe Douglas and company from doing so. And he seems to have a lot of guys that he has surrounded himself with, that he gets his football insight from, that aren't really that qualified to be giving him football ideas because they don't really know too much about it. And there's no wonder why the Jets are 3-8. They have the same record now as what they had last year with Zach Wilson. And this just goes to show that no matter how great you are, you're always going to fall victim to the product of your environment. As great as how Aaron Rodgers has been throughout the majority of his career, he hasn't been bad this season. If they would have went ahead and followed through with Woody Johnson's demands to bench Aaron Rodgers, I'm pretty sure Aaron Rodgers just would have flat out retired. Because what the hell are you doing benching me? Aaron Rodgers hasn't played great. He definitely has fallen off a good bit. This was somebody who was an MVP winner a few years ago, and all of a sudden, he just looks like a shell of himself, but he still is better than the majority of quarterbacks in the league. I was listening to John Middlecoff do a podcast Sunday when they did their instant reaction to them losing to the Colts, and they were saying how Aaron Rodgers isn't even like a top 20 quarterback. I think that's insane. All right, is Aaron Rodgers a little bit responsible for what's transpired with the Jets this year? Yeah, but now with all of these stories coming out, I got to apologize, Aaron Rodgers, because maybe he wasn't solely responsible for Robert Saleh losing his job. There's only so much you can do as a player when you just have a nut job as an owner. And Aaron Rodgers has always been talking about how the energy in the building just feels a little bit off. And now with Joe Douglas getting fired, players in the locker room, they're just over it. And how can you not be over it? You done got rid of Robert Saleh. You can say what you want to about him not being a good coach, but those players on that defense, they played hard for Robert Saleh. When he got fired, Sauce Gardner gave a heartfelt tribute to Robert Saleh for pretty much changing his life. He looked up to Robert Saleh as a father figure pretty much. And with him being gone, the defense has not been playing at the same level without him as what they were before Robert Saleh got fired. And the offense isn't even remotely as good as what they should be relative to the talent that they have on that side of the football. You pretty much bring in a bunch of aging veterans such as Morgan Moses, Tyron Smith, who's up there in age. He's pretty much one step close to retirement, just like Aaron Rodgers is. And Aaron Rodgers isn't really making things any better with him constantly choosing the audible out of the plays. The Jets are just a mess, but you really can't put it on Aaron Rodgers for why they are this bad. I do have to give an apology to Aaron Rodgers because I have been going hard on this guy over the last couple of weeks, along with a lot of people in the national media. But when you got an owner that's just this crazy, what can you do? There's nothing that you can really do to overcome this. It doesn't matter how great you are. And we've seen the Jets be a place where quarterbacks just go to die. When Brett Favre got traded to the Jets, he had a good first half of the season, and then he gets injured, he falls off, then he goes to the Minnesota Vikings, and he's like an interception away from leading them to a Super Bowl. And then you look at what's happened with Sam Darnold since he's left the Jets. He's found a lot of success in Minnesota. The Jets are just a really toxic environment because when you have a toxic front office starting from the owner, everything trickles down. So when you got a bad owner, it trickles down to the general manager, it trickles down to the head coach, and it trickles down to the players. And overall, it affects the total performance of your operation. You gotta have an owner that is willing to let the guys he hired do their jobs. Once again, we got another example like David Temple with the Panthers and Jerry Jones with the Cowboys of an owner that doesn't know how to keep his hands off the wheel. He doesn't allow his drivers to actually get him to his desired destination. He feels like he knows what's best to get them there, and he doesn't. And he's driving the New York Jets right off the highway into the ocean, and they're crashing and burning. And it's to the point now where you're going to be stuck in a very dark place for the foreseeable future until this dude decides to fire the team. Now, some good news is that with Donald Trump taking over as president, Woody Johnson could take over as a role back across the pond or something like that, and his son would end up running this team for the foreseeable future. But he's going to be responsible for hiring the new head coach. So before his son's able to somewhat take control of this thing and maybe be able to right the ship, he still is further going to set this franchise back, because you can't trust Woody Johnson to hire the right GM or the right head coach, because what big name candidate are you going to be able to entice to want to take this job? Yeah, you got a talented roster, but when you got a Looney Tune owner, it just makes you an undesirable team to want to coach for and for people to want to work for you. So the New York Jets right now, with their owner just going way low over the deep end, it looks like they're at a point of no return. I got a homie that still believes that the Jets can right the ship and get into the playoffs in the 7th seed with the 9-8 record. But I keep telling him, man, when you got an owner that's just wilding like this and you just have a toxic culture, there's no way you're going to be able to turn this thing around. And Aaron Rodgers isn't the player that he used to be able to overcome this bad of a situation. Even if he was still the old Aaron Rodgers of past years, I still don't think the Jets would be any better than what they are. It starts from the top down. And you got to have good leadership, and the Jets don't have it from Woody Johnson.